Greetings, chess fans. Are you looking for a secret weapon, a gambit, how to crush your opponent with the black color in 10 moves or less? Are you excited? Well, you're not gonna get it in this video, because this is not how chess works. And I know, you've probably seen so many videos on YouTube that make exactly this promise. You play this gambit, you sacrifice a piece in first 10 moves or so, you're gonna get a crushing attack and your opponent will be defenseless, and you're gonna score how many points and get the rating 2000 or whatever. I'm afraid this is not how chess really works. So in this video, I'm gonna break down the 5 most popular gambits in chess and prove that they're objectively not good. And at the same time, you will never worry about them again in your life. So here we go. We are going to start with the first one. And the first one is the Blackmar-Diemer gambit. What it is if white plays d4, d5 and plays e4, which kind of mirrors the Scotch gambit, except everything is now looking at the other side. White can also include knight c3 first. Let's say here, knight c3, knight f6, play e4. We take with a pawn. Completely fine. But let's say white plays e4, d takes on e4, and knight c3. And from all of the bad gambits, this is the most sound, because if white does everything correctly, white is just slightly worse, but we're not talking about any advantage whatsoever. So for the moment, we are going to hold on to the pawn, knight f6. And I think it's quite important to understand at the very beginning that there's such a concept that will definitely allow you to gain more points, meaning you should accept gambits, but do not hold on to the extra material at all costs. Meaning you take the pawn or the exchange, but keep your eyes open and maybe look for the opportunity to sell it back at the right moment for the right price. And very often, these gambits, players who are playing it, they're looking for immediate results. They're looking for like the swift initiative in 10 moves or less, and try to scare you or bully you with the first moves. But if you are aware of what's going on, it's never going to work. So here, white could try to play bishop g5, threat to take on f6, which, by the way, is not even a threat. I mean, you can allow him to take on f6, and you're going to get the perfect Caro-Kann-Tartakover position. But, okay, let's hold on to the pawn, bishop f5, f3. And here the point is, you don't want to take on f3, because that would kind of prove white's point. After e takes on f3, white could play queen takes on f3, and there's a double attack on the bishop at f5 and the pawn on b7, and maybe you silly could get in trouble. So instead of this, we can defend the position with knight e7. As you can see, the pawn on e4 is defended by the knight on f6, which in return is defended by the knight on d7. And if white decides to play something funny as g4, bishop g6, and queen e2, really insisting that you take on f3 here, you take on g4 here, and white's going to castle long, and indeed, it looks like white is having a terrific initiative. But we have to be smart about this. So instead of this, let's sell back the pawn. And you can just play the simple move c6 with the idea to play a good version of the Scandinavian. You play queen a5 and castle longside. Let's say white plays here, you play queen a5, target the bishop. White defends it and is threatening to play something like f5. You play e6 and white is running out of ideas. Ultimately, white again is just worse. So this funny stuff doesn't work. And if white decides to take on e4 with the pawn, we take with the knight, takes, plays knight f3. And here you have a couple of good continuations, but just do not miss some early shots on f7, some sacrifices. So you could play c6. If white goes here, I think the simplest move is to play bishop d5. That's it, which by the way is also a very characteristic move for the Scandinavian. White probably is going to reject it, give a check, queen b6, think about the long castle, you're completely safe. Now instead of this, white could try to do something else, which is maybe f3. And again, he's hoping that you're going to take it, and white will have a choice. For example, after e takes on f3, queen takes on f3 is some gambit, I forgot its name. You can safely accept the pawn. White has no compensation for the 2 missing pawns. If white takes with a knight, you can play c6. And basically what white is trying to do, white is going for this cheapo, like bishop f5, bishop c4, should castle, knight e5. And let's say you're completely bored yesterday, you don't know what it is. there's rook f5 and knight f7. So that's basically it. This is the trick in this position. But you don't have to fall for this, and you can play like a good version of the Karkan. But actually, I think the simplest continuation for you is to play bishop f5, defend the pawn, and if white is really interested to gain it back immediately, his position literally makes no sense. Meaning you play knight e4, knight e5, knight e4, and complete development. And I'm just looking at what white is doing at the king side, and it's not very clear what exactly is this. So h4, h6, stopping h5, and you're just getting a very active game. I love this move c5, very often opening up the position at the queen side. Black is better. So maybe white can take on e4 and play queen f3, which creates some imbalances, but you just take on c3. And white has to make a choice, take on f5 or take on c3. If he takes on f5, now the position simplifies. You include e6, retreat with the knight, retreat with the knight again, and just play c5 at the right moment. I think this maneuver is quite important to remember. Knight c6, queen b6, and think about the long castle. Again, white has no compensation for the missing pawn. There's no tricks. And instead of this, maybe white could try to play b takes on c3, hoping that you're going to defend the pawn somehow and start to play passive. But we already know that we can sell the pawn at the right moment for the right price. And okay, like you could take the pawn on c2 here, but let's just complete development. e6. Do not fall for these early tricks. And after queen b7, knight e7, white has to complete development. Finally, we play bishop d6. We want to castle short. We play f6. After bishop g5, she'll castle rook b8. And what's worse? Yeah, so this is the reason why Blackmar-Diemer Gambit is sometimes played at Blitz, but never between good players at serious time control. Let's move to the next one. And the next one is Hillbilly attack. And Hillbilly attack, I actually didn't know what this is until somebody pointed this out in my bootcamp, the Karkan. After bishop c4, d5, white can play bishop b3. And this trick is popularized by the English grandmaster Simon Williams, but I believe he's targeting for an audience up to a certain rating range, which could be like 1,000, 1,200, I don't really know. And again, very often for these gambits, white, typically it's from the white's perspective, is going for some early tricks, like try to crush you in 10 moves or less. Here we are going to accept the pawn. It's completely fine to take it. White plays queen h5, tries to give you a checkmate on f7. Obviously, we see that. We play g6. And here, queen h4 is the main continuation. I think that queen e5 here literally makes no sense at all. Yeah, knight f6 and knight e7, and white is losing a million tempi, so I wouldn't really worry about this too much. So white plays here queen h4, and there's one move that you basically have to know, and ultimately it doesn't even matter. The most accurate move here is bishop f5, and not knight f6. Because if you play knight f6, you close the diagonal of your queen on d8. And you cannot offer a queen trade, which apparently is quite important. Meaning here, after knight c3, bishop f5, f3, you can no longer offer a queen trade. And of course, you can perfectly play this. You take on f3, you complete development, but the key idea is that you do not castle short. Why would you do that? Because white is very much ready to go for the kingside attack. Instead, play e6, secure the bishop at f5, and you're going to castle the long side. And if white is thinking about some funny ideas of h3, g4, you can always play h5 if you have to, and it never works. So the game could continue like this, bring out the queen somewhere, and castle alongside. That's it. You have an extra pawn. But the most accurate move here is still bishop f5. And the point is, after white's knight c3, we play e6, and white is simply backed in a corner, meaning he has to trade the queens. And you hold on to the pawn by playing h3, h5, and white has no compensation. So the best white can do is to play f3. And after f3, we are going to take on f3, knight takes on f3, and again the simple move e6. And I think that most of the time white's going to keep the queens on the board, because if he trades the queens here, maybe he can go for some tricks with g4. But ultimately, the point is he's attacking your pawn on f7 and the bishop at f5, but you have knight h6, so it's completely fine. d4 targets the knight on h6, we defend it by attacking the knight on e5 instead. And no matter how hard white tries, he is simply down a pawn for no compensation. Okay, he has the bishop pair, but you drive out his pieces, and this is where the position basically ends with a solid advantage for black. Again, all of this is not very accurate for white. And maybe the best that white can do is play queen f2, and now we just go for the long castle. Knight e7, knight f6, h3, we stop it, we play h5, bring out the bishop somewhere, queen b6, long castle. I know this is not a very forcing line, but if you know the concept of bishop f5, e6, and castle alongside hillbilly attack, will never bother you again. The next one is Englund Gambit. Yeah, now we are approaching the territory when we're looking at pretty dubious gambits, if not outright losing. So the Englund Gambit is d4, e5, and again, it's quite popular up to a certain rating range. I would again say like 1,000, 1,200 at best. But it basically is holding on for a couple of tricks. So I'm going to show all of them. Meaning after d6 and e5, knight c6, we defend the pawn, we play knight f3, and here black typically plays queen e7, which is quite funny because it was brought to practice by Carles Betinch, a Latvian player who was living in 19th century, and he's also the father of the Latvian gambit. So unfortunately for him, he invented two not very good gambits, and I'm a big patriot of Latvia, obviously, but I cannot support the Latvian gambit. So here, if you're totally like you're not interested in whatsoever what's going on here, you can just play knight c3, give up the pawn on e5. However, bishop f4 is just good. There's nothing to worry about here, and black is just playing for tricks. Meaning, if he gives you a check, queen b4 check, here the common mistake is white could play queen d2 and queen c3, which is trick number one. Black plays bishop b4 and he wins the queen. But okay, we are not going to fall for this. And instead, the best move is bishop d2. And here, black has no choice. Because if he plays something like queen c5, he's losing million tempos. Meaning you play knight c3, you play e4. How many moves was it? Queen e7, queen b4, queen c5, queen e5. You're going to castle alongside. Final trick d5, e5. No gambits accepted anymore. Black is borderline lost. So black probably has to go all in with queen b2. And again, here the accurate move is knight c3 and not bishop c3. Because after bishop c3, the trick is black goes here, bishop b4, takes on c3, and there's a mate on the board. Yes, that's very nice, of course. But again, I think it's going to work like once for someone in a lifetime if you have a rating below 1,000, really. Apart from that, I don't think it can really work. And if you know the move knight c3, black is immediately busted. He's just lost. So do not play the Englund Gambit. So here, black will play maybe knight b4, again going for tricks, targeting the pawn on c2. We defend it, knight e4, c5, rook b1. Here, the queen is pushed away. Knight b5, a3, knight e5, black can resign. That's it. The queen is under attack. There's a fork on c7. And finally, maybe black can try to play bishop b4. We play rook b1, rook b3, a3, force black to take on c3. How many tempos black has lost? I already lost the count, but after e4, white's lead in the development is just crucial, really, here. So ultimately, what can black do? Is maybe here he can try to play f6 and try to play this as the Blackmar-Diemer gambit, sort of, right, down a tempo. And we can pretty much use the same idea. We hold on to the pawn, we play bishop f4. If black accepts, we take it. If black plays queen f6, you could take on c6 to get exactly the same response as in the Blackmar-Diemer gambit, but knight e3 is just fine. Complete development, e3, bishop e2, whatever, and black has no compensation here whatsoever. We have to check the next one. And the next one is, the Alien Gambit. And you know what's really funny is that some players even have played it against me on chess.com. So I think this is things gone too far. And originally, if I'm not terribly mistaken, the Alien Gambit was popularized by Gotham Chess. And now Witty Alien is advocating it pretty heavily, and he just plays the Alien Gambit and nothing else. But I think also Witty knows himself it's not a good opening ultimately, because he's a good player. Here the point is, white plays the Caracan, takes knight f6 and plays knight g5, which again is an opening for tricks only and nothing else. And if you don't want to play h6, which is the main continuation, you don't have to. You can just play c5 with knight c6 to follow, which is going to be one of the critical maneuvers for you to know. And if white sacrifices on f7, which is the idea of the alien gambit, gives you a check, now you see in many lines you have not weakened the g6 square, which is quite important. You play king e7, the attack is going to fizzle out, you have an extra piece, and just start to convert it already. But I think that h6 is just good. You're literally forcing your opponent to take on f7, because if he doesn't do it, if he plays knight f3, the simplest response you can do is this move knight e7 to make the knight on g1 look pretty bad. You play queen c7, you play e6, bishop d6, c5, and according to Stockfish, what is worse? Slightly, but what is worse? No privileges for white. So of course white plays knight f7, which is the entire point of the alien gambit. We accept it, white plays knight f3, and here the simplest response, by far, is the move c5, which is very easy to remember. You want to play c5, knight c6, and trade the queens. That's it. So white again is essentially going for cheap tricks, meaning white could try to play d5. And the point of d5 is white wants you to take on d5, meaning after queen d5, it's a very cute idea, of course, I'm not gonna really deny it. Bishop c4 takes a knight e5. That's the fork. Yes, so white wins a queen. But the point is d5 is immediately losing on the spot if you know the best move, which is king g8. And now the pawn on d5 is just dropping. Because if white plays the very tempting move bishop c4, threatening with some d6 discovered checks, you play b5. And that's it. Bishop b5 is queen a5. White is dropping the bishop. White cannot do that. And instead, if white retreats, you collect pawn on d5. And white is just down a piece. So that's why after king g8, white could try to play c4. And now you play e6 and simplify the position. And ultimately, white is still going for these cheap tricks, meaning bishop d3, takes, queen d5, queen e2. There's one trick. There's another trick. Once again, white is threatened to play bishop c4 and take on e6. You defend. White plays knight e5. Another trick. But his king is in the center, so it's never going to work. Knight c6, takes, bishop c4. Looks like a pin, but you have an extra piece. So finally, when white castles away, you play b5, and now white should resign. Because after bishop b5 is knight e4, and it's straight to the converting phase. This is after c4. Not very difficult to learn. And there's also the other move, which is bishop c4 check. You play e6. White can try to play queen e2, but you just take the pawn, play knight c6, something like a long castle here. And here the most accurate idea for you is to play knight e5, because what white wants to do, white wants to push those pawns to the king side, h4, g4, g5. Go for some, again, early initiative where you're a bit not sure how to play. So knight e5 is the best. Defend that pawn on e6 just in case. g4, bishop e7, h4, queen d6, bring out the pieces. White has some initiative, but nothing real. And he's down a piece. So you might be thinking about like rook f8, king e8, just move the king towards the queen side. And finally, the main line, which is after c5, white plays knight e5, king g8, which is necessary. Because after king e8, bishop d3, white is winning because of bishop g6 check. So we play king g8. White tries to play bishop c4 check, e6, and should castle. I think this is the best that he can do, meaning he offers you to take the pawn on d4 because then white's going to reject it and you actually opened up the position for white, which is, by the way, still completely fine for you. But here the best is knight c6. And obviously white has to keep the knight on e5 alive for some attacking chances, so white typically plays knight g6. And what he is hoping that you are going to either take on d4 or play rook h7, and then the knight on g6 gives white some attacking properties. But here there's one move that immediately kills all hope for white, which is queen e8. That's it. After queen e8, white is just busted. Because if he takes on h8, we're straight at the converting phase, 2 minor pieces for the rook. If white plays bishop d3, it's c4. The bishop is pushed away. It can no longer guard the knight on g6. White is losing even more material. And ultimately, white has to retreat with the knight and still go for these early tricks. And already here, there's a couple of very good continuations for you. But the simplest one is the move g5. You push back the knight. I know it exposes the king, but again, remember, you have the extra piece. And if white plays knight e3, here you have more than one good continuation. I think the simplest one is just take the pawn, f4, play queen h5. Think about bringing the pieces in the game, like bishop g7 and maybe rook h7, rook g7. And you can close the position at the right moment with g4 if you really have to. But also there's this move knight a5. Try to kill the bishop on c4, and white is collapsing immediately. So I figured that maybe the best that white can do is try to play knight h3 to stop this knight a5 idea. Now you take on d4 and close the position with g4. Knight f2, sell the pawn on g4 by rook h7, and again we're straight to the converting phase. So the bottom line is, Alien Gambit is just a losing opening for white if you're doing everything correctly. And finally, we had the final one, which is the Stafford Gambit. And I'm a big fan of Eric Rosen. I think he is one of the most likable characters and influencers in chess, but he's also pushing this Stafford Gambit, which me as a professional, I have very serious doubts that it's a good opening. Meaning, the Stafford Gambit is e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight e5, and knight c6. Black sacrifices a pawn, and again goes for early tricks. And I have to admit, they're looking really nice. Like, if you have been living under a rock and you don't know anything, the point is here, white typically plays d3, which is still good. Black plays bishop c5, and many amateurs that really like to play bishop g5, they love pins. But this actually is a very big mistake, because black can play knight e4, and white is thinking, all right, I'm winning the queen. Bishop f2 and bishop g4, it's a checkmate on the board, which I'm not really sure if this is technically legal as mate, because legal as mate is with the black knight on d4, but probably it qualifies. It doesn't really matter. So we're not going to fall for this. We're going to complete development, bishop e2, to take away the g4 square for the black knight. And typically here black tries to play h5 to insist on the knight g4. So all you need to know here is do not castle short. There's no need. Because if you do, if you castle short, black plays knight g4, and h3 is quite a serious inaccuracy. It's not losing, by the way, but it's a serious inaccuracy, because there's the trick. Black is threatened with a checkmate, and h takes on g4. Now this is a losing move, because h takes on g4, this is leading to inevitable mate, and g3 is queen g3. So it's a mate. The bishop on c5 is pinning the king. So it's not working, and instead of this, you can still survive. You cannot play h takes on g4. You can play e5. And black has to take with the knight, which leads to an equal position. If he takes with the queen and insists on the checkmate, actually he's the one who is losing in 10 moves, not you, because his queen is lost. But we are going to be looking at a more better continuation, and instead of the show castle, all you need to know is that you have to play c3, which prepares at the right moment d4. You want to play knight e2, knight f3, and you just watch out for these early tricks. That's it. So black could maybe go for some long castle. Let's say he could try to play bishop e6 and long castle, because if he plays like knight g4, you play d4 immediately, close the diagonal, push back the knight. Black is just losing immediately. So let's say bishop e6, knight e2, queen d7, knight f3, put back the knight on f3, queen c2, and black has no ideas here whatsoever, because the center is closed. He can't do anything. Maybe bishop b6, h3, careful move, bishop g5, and at the right moment go for a long castle. Apart from that, I'm out of ideas what black could really do here, except of these early tricks. Maybe here there's also this trick of queen d4. Target the pawn on f2, and here the only difference is you can castle short, because you're about to play c3, d4, and yeah, that's it. Maybe queen d6. Black again is going for these tricks, but they never really work. Yeah, because let's say knight g4, you play e5, take on c5, and it's just game over. You just win a piece. And the other trick is, I think, knight g4, where black wants to play queen h4, attack the pawn on f2 and the bishop on g4, and you just play g3. Force black to take on g4, and again, we're straight to the converting phase. That being said, so these gambits, they're not very good ones, and I think that they maybe work until a certain level, which could be like 1000, like I already said. I don't really know, but I don't deny that definitely they can give you some fun value, especially in blitz games, in bullet games, because especially when you're playing bullet games, that all you need really in those positions is the swift initiative, and then maybe if I will also would be sometimes falling for the alien gambit because in 1 minute I cannot really figure it out. But when I have enough time and you have enough time, you should be able eventually to figure things out. And I wish actually that the chess content creators, they would focus on the actual good gambits, because there's so many good gambits, and I don't see anybody really popularizing the Evans gambit. The Evans gambit, according to an engine, is a very sound opening, and there's so many tricks, and there's many more gambits that you can do that engine fully supports. And I think it's very risky for you to play openings that are borderline losing, because in the long run you're going to simply lose more points. If you want to know more about how to counter popular gambits, several years ago I made a bootcamp number 17, how to counter 15 popular gambits. I'm going to leave the link in the description. You can check it out so that you have a complete picture. And these gambits I mentioned in this video, they're not listed in that video, but there's more, like the Latvian gambit, like the Rusov gambit, etc. And as a final word, I would like to say is, if you want to be really serious in chess, you should not take shortcuts. You should study good openings. And how can you know which opening is a good opening, or which opening has a good reputation and which opening has a shady reputation? I suggest you to have a look at some tier lists. I think I just mispronounced it because somebody corrected me. It's tier list. Yeah. So I have created 2 tiers from the white's perspective and black's perspective. So go check them out. Maybe it's going to give you some ideas. 5 stars, it means it's fantastic. 4 out of 5, it's a really great opening. 1 star out of 5, don't try this ever. That's it. So feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Do you agree with my selection? And post your thoughts about some other gambits that are dubious you have encountered, but they definitely give some extra value. And hope you enjoyed it, and I'm wishing you to have a great day. Take care.